Hello, our friends. Welcome to this week's edition of SCLC Today TV. I'm your host, Maynard Eaton, and of course, our president and CEO, Dr. Charles Steele Jr. Dr. Steele, this week, a major focus has been on Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Black Wall Street Massacre, a story that went largely untold for many years.
Well, thank you for that question. What we must realize, Maynard, is that stories have power. And the people that were afraid, the ones who survived the massacre, they assassinated, murdered, slaughtered over 300 people from the African-American Negro community. And Negroes were afraid. African-Americans were afraid. Black folks were afraid in 1921 when they were told by the authorities, and that was anybody of the Caucasian race with a gun, not just a position, that if you say anything about it and keep talking about it, we coming after you. That's why it was suppressed. That's why it was silenced. You know, the fact being is that stories have power. They did not want those people at that time, being African Americans, experiencing what they went through. They didn't want the people to pass it on to the next generation, even the generation that it happened upon, because stories have power. And
well, those stories are being told now. Those stories are being told now. Those stories are being told now. Do you think it'll lead to some form of reparations, a topic that you're quite familiar with and passionate about?
I'd never give up on reparation. And then in comparison with the insurrection of January the 6th, why do you think Congress and others in a certain party, because I'm talking independency here, I'm getting out of the political arena, why do you have politicians, I should say, on the other side, which are the Republicans, who are trying to not recognize that we actually had an attempted insurrection overthrow of this government? And that was not 100 years ago. That was just a few months ago, January the 6th. Why are they trying to suppress what happened there at the federal level, at the federal capital of the United States of America? Because stories have power. They don't want this story conveyed, because who's writing the history? They want to be written out of history with the insurrection attempt on January the 6th, which was an insurrection, but they didn't win. They lost, just like they lost the Civil War. Somebody need to tell them, you would never win when you got a democracy that was founded upon what we stand for in this country, because there's fair-minded thinking folks on both sides. Stories have power.
But that story is also being attempted to be squashed, to be wiped away, to be whitewashed, if you will. A play on words here. But what I'm suggesting is they don't want that story to really be told.
They don't want it to be told because it's another educational opportunity to exemplify and to prove that America has never been healed from the transatlantic African slave trade. It's never been healed from the enslavement of people of color, black folks, of the Negro race.
One of the things you are adamant about is voting rights. It's something SCLC is founded upon, something SCLC advocates all the time, voting rights. But voting rights are under attack in states all across this country. Do you ever see bipartisanship working in America again?
As a Christian, a devout Christian, I must never give up on hope. There are always some fair-minded thinking folks from both sides. We always had people who looked like us to go on the side of the opposition, which is the enemy, who tried to keep you from voting, who's trying to keep you from being a citizen of the statehood of recognition that I'm a human being come from the same DNA as Caucasians or any other ethnicity or people. So there are fair-minded thinking folks. If there were not any fair-minded thinking ethnicity of folks, in particular the Caucasian, we wouldn't be sitting here today having this conversation, Mr. Eaton. We always had people that looked like us who betrayed us, but we also had a equilibrium balancing act in terms of fair-minded thinking people from the Caucasian race who stood and actually lost their lives to bring about the opportunities for all of God's children and people of color. Yes, I have hope. I have hope, yes.
But what about these voting suppression efforts across the country? In Georgia, where you're sitting now, and other states, Texas, are you concerned about the next election? Are you concerned that Black folks, people of color, and others will be repressed in their right to go to the polls?
Well, I'm concerned about people getting emotional and celebrating when the other folks are eradicated. Had blindness on. I'm going to say it again. The reason that the U.S. Supreme Court, and never will be no suppression going on at this time, had we not had the gutting of the 1965 Voter Rights Act of Section 4 and Section 5. While we were telling folks, Senator Hank Sanders and his lovely wife, Faya Rose, and others, but I call them because we orchestrated in working with SCLC, with Senator Sanders and Faya Rose, that we were going to go up the East Coast all the way to Washington, D.C., and educate our people to what's getting ready to take place. But they were still celebrating, and the opposition was planning to eradicate it, taking away the freedom and justice that we had earned and died for, shed blood for. And they used this example. We have a Black president now. Racism is over. And the people of color did not hear that sentiment.
You think the John Lewis voting rights reform bill will somehow restore what we lost when that was vacated, Section 3, Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act?
Absolutely. HR 1 dealing with the structure, campaign finance and so forth, but HR 4 actually deal with the protection of citizenry, of the people, like we had in the 1965 Voter Rights Act, the federal protection. So see, that's basically HR 4, which is related to the bill that will be involved with the commemoration of the mindset of none other than Congressman John Lewis. But my interpretation of being free again is to restore the 1965 Voter Rights Act with expansions in terms of HR 4 and also HR 1 or Senate Bill 1. But you have a gridlock, you have a stalemate within the Senate, but you still have the opportunity with this administration, and which I think they will at some point. I think the current administration, President Biden, has done quite a bit in the last few months than we have seen in a long time in terms of trying to educate the people, let them know that Jim Crow is here and that this country is a racist country. And you have people of color, like the young man, U.S. Senator Tim Scott out of South Carolina, who's saying that, no, America is not racist. How can you say that when we had the worst Holocaust in the history of the planet called Earth in forced migration of African Americans being driven and being in the belly of ships and thrown out to the alligators and the whales and everything after they got sick. And it was all because of racism. And we as Black people was considered the most profitable piece of property. We was not even considered human beings. And how can someone say that America is not racist?
That is still, some might wonder, do you speak that directly to white benefactors, white corporate leaders? Do you actually say that to the captains of commerce and people that you know and associate with? Do you tell white folks what you just said?
I tell the country. I don't I don't back up on what I say. I tell all folks. And if you're a citizen of this country, you need to know your history. And we cannot afford to sit idly by and be silenced and suffer. That's what happened in Tulsa. People silently suffered. But how you going to reach the opposition if there's any opposition, which we know we do have, but not all people who are not of the colored race or the Negro race or the African-American race or people of color, not all of them are with us. They wasn't with Dr. King, and not all Caucasians are against us. Hello, somebody. Dr. King had many a Caucasian and white people who lost their lives because of the movement. So what am I saying? It's not really basically dealing with the ethnicity or pigmentation than it is with the mindset. I'll take you to the NFL, the National Football League. You know, when they coming out about race-based norm, race norming. What in the world is that? Something they came up with, and they got $1 billion over there to sell the dementia and the concussions that these athletes get. But they saying African Americans and black folk are not the same as white players when we are 70% of the players who get these concussions. And they're saying that our DNA is different. But thank God, there are some scientists, black and white, who came to the rescue of these athletes and said it's no difference. 99.9%, we are the same in our DNA. Thank God for the science.
And that's one way science combats racism, you're saying also.
Absolutely. With what? With the facts. With the facts. I'm dealing with the facts. And that came out just this week. And the NFL should be ashamed of itself. And the commissioner and all of the officers of the NFL need to come out and make a song and don't say but 2 or 3 words. I apologize, African Americans. I apologize, African Americans. If they do that, I get the beat to it. They need to sing the lyrics. I come up with the beat. I know some rappers.
Now, I was going to say, you must know somebody because you have no rhythm. Now, we know that now. Well, speaking of suffering, the impact of COVID-19, suffering. Did legendary civil rights groups like ours suffer financially during the pandemic? How tough was it on you?
Oh, my Lord. We've been blessed, Mr. Eaton, and thank you for that question. Mr. Eaton, we have been blessed to all of our employees. No one has missed a paycheck. I have called some friends, new and traditionally, older friends, in the middle friends, and friends becoming friends, new founded friends, and they all have come to the aid of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Now, I can't talk about any other organization. All I can say is God has blessed us, and we are still here. And I'm very concerned about our employees, where in the last year and 3 months, 2.5, 3 months, our employees, majority, with the exception of 2 or 3, have not seen the inside of our office or our office complex because I told them to stay away. And what you've been doing in the office, do it at home. I don't want you to catch any virus related to COVID-19. Only virus that I'm concerned about now is racism. I don't want them to be concerned about coming to the office catching the virus of COVID-19. We're concerned now about COVID racism because you can stay at home and still have a silent killer because of the lack of jobs, the lack of people who are so conservative, they don't want you to have any money. Just look at the statistics of Mr. Eaton of people getting killed on the expressway just here in Atlanta. 2 or 3 people a day are being killed because folks are short-tempered now. And not to mention the fact that the previous administration or president talked about the ethnicity of certain folks from China, Malaysia, and the Orient, you know, as if they're invading the privacy of the citizenry of this country. No, we all are of the world citizenry of God, and we should be respected as that. And no race should be belittled because of a leader sitting in the Oval Office who always looking to pass on the blame to someone else. And people will look at folks and they look like us, or they don't look like the traditional folks who actually brought about the slavery concept and benefited and got rich off of us being a piece of property. And they value it just like they value a house or their cabins or anything that's erected or skyscraper. They valued us as property, and they made money off of us, and we never got paid for it. So that's racism to the core. And I just like to say in closing that if we don't deal with this virus that's a silent killer called racism, then America, not just America, but it starts in America. When America apologized, when America go through the healing process, everybody was talking, we've been saying it for many, many of years, Tulsa had never been healed from the racist attitudes that took place with Black Wall Street. We got to be healed, Mr. Eaton.
I'm just puzzled, besmirched. How does Black Lives Matter make millions and legendary SCLC groups and civil rights groups have been struggling to survive? I don't get how they popularized Black Lives Matter movement. They got paid, and many others have not. That's confounds some people.
Well, I'm too busy to make sure that we're sustainable to look at. But I ain't looking at the Joneses. The Jones across the street got a car.
I had to ask.
I'm not holding it against you. My daddy said, don't worry about the Joneses and the Brown down the street. They just got a new car. I'm trying to put food on the table. And say, I can call a taxi or put my thumb out. We gonna get transported where we need to. So I'm not looking at the Joneses across the street. I'm about the sustainability of a historical organization in the historicity of what we have played in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King had these same problems. People, trying to overlook what he has done, the movement and what he had orchestrated. This is nothing new. Why you think SNCC, dissolve and court dissolve, but SCLC is still here because I'm tending to SCLC business, not anyone else. But I include anyone who want to work with us in a nonviolent fashion and seriously committed about the upward mobility of the oppression of people of color and poor folks. That's what I'm concerned about. Sustaining this vehicle that was sent here by God for us to be free. And it's called the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. That's what my sustainability and focus is all about.
Dr. Steele, let's conclude this show with a salute to our chairman, SCLC, and who was honored, Dr. Bernard LaFayette, who was honored with the Doctorate of Humane Letters from a Salve Regina College or university, I imagine, in Newport, Rhode Island. Quite an honor for
Newport, Rhode Island.
Newport, Rhode Island, yes, sir.
Well, Dr. LaFayette is one who, if I count him up, he probably got about 50 of those honorary doctorates and earned honorary doctorates, as well as the other academic degrees that he has obtained. But anytime a major university, like Salve Regina University, Newport, Rhode Island, bestowed a Doctor of Humane Letters upon our chairman of the board, Dr. Bernard LaFayette, all I can say is they're going to keep coming because he's not doing it for the recognition, but we need the recognition to recognize him, because he was the first to get to Selma, along with Miss Amelia Boynton, and figure out how we can work out Selma. Not no other orchestrated organization of people or whatever. It was Dr. Maynard Lafayette. He was there 2 years before the rest of them, and was on the FBI and the KKK hitters list. They were supposed to assassinate him, and he was hit on the forehead, but he survived that, and they did not kill him the same night they were supposed to kill Medgar Evers. Dr. Lafayette was supposed to have been killed. Now, Tim, Dr. Lafayette, we salute you, my brother, and you have many more fights and battles to lead and to win and to coordinate and to help to sustain for the upward mobility and future of SCLC and the anti-civil rights movement.
He's a heck of a civil rights leader, but he's also a class act. And Dr. Lafayette,
it's only one.
Again.
It's only one.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been SCLC Today TV, another edition with our president, Dr. Charles Steele Jr. See you next week.